Right, let's get one thing straight from the off. This is either comical genius or evil genius. I'm not quite sure. However, despite the fact that this has potential to be beyond stupid, like, I'm not even joking, like, testing it in the range is one thing, but doing it in the open world is another. Just because it's beyond so stack reliant. You're able to hit a regular consistency of about 11 million damage a shot, and it just explodes everywhere. It's pure bloody evil. That being said, this only really applies when you're at max stacks and you're kind of relying on strikers having a weird interaction with Merciless. Merciless itself is iffy when building stacks, to put it politely. This does kind of qualify as a meme build. It's been done before. I've shown this pretty much this exact same build before, but on the old iterations of strikers. It's now just got about 3 times more powerful, which is kind of really funny. Although it's a bit of a nightmare to build stacks, even without having max stacks, it chews through pretty much everything you put in front of it. Especially if you can aim better than I can. Half of my shots does bloody miss. If you are able to hit your shots, this thing is a monster of epic proportions. Now, after all of the friggin' testing that I have done, although I don't recommend running a rifle with strikers, if you are going to run a rifle with strikers, you have 2 options. This being the better of the 2. It's just like the level of damage you're able to put out is beyond comical. It's dumb, and shit explodes. Like, well, you can't argue with the simple fact that shit explodes. Like, shit exploding is funny. It's hilarious. It's brilliant. The explosion radius of it is actually surprisingly large and quite hilarious. And yeah, there's not really too much to say on this other than the fact that it is just comical. But yeah, I have been running DPS tests with strikers using a rifle, and annoyingly, the M1A CQB doesn't actually really hold out. I can't believe I'm saying that. Simply just because it is the highest burst DPS rifle in the game. It simply doesn't really shoot fast enough to actually be able to maintain the higher end stacks. So you end up having to look at other weapons to try and bolster it. And then you run into another problem, which is how much handling do you actually need for them to be even suitable. So from all the testing I've done, I came to really 2 conclusions. So we'll just quickly run down kind of the rough list. So the M1A CQB, although it does fire really fast, you've got a limited magazine, and it only really excels when you actually build it for damage and get in close range. CQB, close quarter combat, for those that didn't know. It does have the highest burst damage, but the overall effect of it with a striker's build is kind of lacking. The Sokon M1A, again, same thing. However, then, your next bet will be the USC .45. However, that requires so much handling to actually even be able to make use of. It was unreal. The Lavoa turned out alright, and the lightweight M4 turned out really good, but they don't explode. Classic M1A just doesn't fire fast enough. The MDR battle rifle was actually really, really handy. I quite liked it, but again, it had this really annoying issue of it doesn't explode. The 1886, I didn't even bother. Maybe there's some surprise in there where the 1886 is god tier on strikers, but nah. MK17 was okay. The SIG turned out pretty damn good. The Resolute MK47 was just, no matter what I did, just the damage wasn't there. Same with the USC 15 Mod 2. The only two outliers that I tried that really, really worked were the Merciless and the M16A2. The M16A2 is actually a surprise contender because of a weird interaction it has with Boomerang. You can basically have it up permanently. I'll show you a bit on the end. But overall, if you're going to run rifle, Merciless is the way to go. It's kind of hilarious. It also does actually have one of the highest sustained DPS of all the ARs, simply just because it actually has a decent mag. It's got a very good optimal range at 50 meters. The RPM's 400. It's got a pretty high, well, pretty decent-ish base damage, but it's all about trying to get that duplex trigger mechanic to operate so that you are able to cause things to explode, and I have no idea how that guy killed me so quick. That explosion, along with some striker stacks, does some serious damage. It can hit up to about 11 mil, and there is a weird interaction. I'm pretty sure it's a bug, but there's a weird interaction with strikers and Merciless. You can get it to basically cause it to explode every shot, which we're not going to go into too much detail on because it's clearly not meant to be happening for one reason or another. But you are still able to hit 900,000 plus to about 1.3 million on critical headshots with the Merciless, and because of the fire rate, this does actually work out as really, really good DPS. Adding in things like Obliterate, I did try it with Perfect Glass Cannon, and the damage is nuts, but you kind of get one shot because you don't have any immediate burst. You end up having to rely on the explosion a lot more, which means you need to shoot them a bit more, and yeah, it ends up being a mess. So I don't recommend Glass Cannon. Obliterate is a good way to go. Now, if you are wanting to try and get a little bit more damage out of it, you can swap the roles around, where pretty much every single striker's piece I have on this has weapon handling on. You probably could put crit damage on and then have your chest talent be braced. That would potentially give you the same effect, as well as a tad bit more on the damage side, just because you'd be making up another 48% critical hit damage, which potentially is a good way to go. But overall, that would be just a little bit too much weapon handling, where I feel like just having the amount of weapon handling I have at the moment is just enough to sort of keep the weapon stable and usable, and then adding in something along the lines of Obliterate gives me more than enough to be able to utilize the weapon in its entirety. It's pretty stable, it's pretty accurate, it works very well. You get 15% weapon handling from strikers itself, and then with 8% weapon handling rolls, you end up with a decent amount. I believe in total, including strikers, it's about 47% weapon handling. Adding in the watch, it's like 57. If you used braced and just utilized the striker's piece along with your watch, you end up with about 70%. You don't really need 70%, but in the long run, it's potentially a more efficient way of getting the weapon handling you need. But I don't know, having Obliterate on really does actually kind of work out in your favour, because although it's relying on crits, it will bolster both your crits and your non-crits. So that is a plus side as well. Although, with all this being said, like I have also directly said, rifles on strikers are pretty much not really worth it. Although this is fun, it does do some decent damage. The explosions are hilarious. It obviously works. It's not going to be the absolute best in slot for a striker's build, simply just because rifles they've got a good chunk of damage on them, but they either have really high fire rate, but you have to spam your trigger, in which case you will then need to utilize things along the lines of weapon handling in order to stabilize it, or they just don't have the magazine capacity or the fire rate in order to deal with building striker stacks quickly and efficiently. Although Merciless and the M16A2 are your best bets, they are mostly not really worth it, simply just because an AR or a shotgun or an SMG can do it better and quicker, and you will end up getting similar damage results at a lot higher RPM. So yeah, as you can see, this is me in the range just shooting stuff. I'm just gonna go for like mixing it up between head and body shots, and yeah, it does damage, it works. The explosions are great. I keep going on about the explosions because just, I don't know, all problems can be solved with the correct application of explosives, and then double it. So yeah, it works, it's fun, it's interesting. It's not really worth it because you can do similar, if not a lot better, with pretty much any AR. Anyway, just because we can, let's just have a quick gander at the build. So yeah, 4-piece strikers, Fox's Prayer, and I have a Providence Defense with Obliterate on. All strikers rolls are weapon damage and weapon handling. The chest is crit chance, crit damage, and Fox's Prayer are critical hit damage. All mods are critical hit chance. For secondary weapon, it is entirely up to you, but my mods aren't maxed out. We should be able to hit approximately 51% critical hit chance, and we're not rocking that great on the critical hit damage end, but it does work out as intended. Now there is one thing that I would like to show you before we bugger off, and that is the MK16. Promise I won't be too long, well, this video is dragging on and I've waffled on too long already, but there is a weird interaction with the MK16, and that is just look how long I can keep Boomerang up. I mean, it's not permanent, but it might as well be. Yeah, it's interesting, and we can build stacks quite quickly and efficiently. We can do some pretty hefty damage with it, and yeah, it does work. So if you're actually interested in having an MK16 build, this is pretty much the way to go. It does do damage. You can build stacks slightly quicker just because of the larger fire rate, and the larger mag also does come in handy, but there's no explosions. Like, I need the explosions. Anyway, have fun, good luck, don't die. It's bad for the health.